The rifle
Check the
was
readings.
misaligned
Any
by
anomalies?
0.3
Levels are
degrees.
steady, just a minor
Sarah Chen
fluctuation
saw
here.
it from
Good.
30
Run a
feet
full reset.
away, a whisper of deviation invisible to everyone else on the range. The morning sun cut through California desert
This
air
model
at
features a new
precisely
scope mount for
7:14
improved
a.m.,
stability.
and the
Good.
SEAL
How does it
Team's
perform
6th
in the field?
qualification
Exceeds
course was about to
expectations, sir.
fail for the sixth
Safety check
consecutive
complete.
shooter
Bolts
because
are clear.
nobody noticed
Copy.
what
Magazine.
she'd spotted
Ready
in
for mag?
3 seconds.
Mag in.
She was 16 years old, and
Path's
she
clear
wasn't
ahead.
supposed to be
Copy
hit.
that. Watching the
The
flanks.
observation
Roger,
platform
stay
creaked
sharp.
under her weight as she leaned
Here's the
forward.
key for the ammo.
Below,
Got it.
Chief
Thanks.
Petty Officer Marcus
scope.
Vance settled
Will do.
behind the Barrett
Good to go.
M82A1. His breathing controlled, his position textbook perfect. 2,000 meters downrange, a target the size of a dinner plate waited in wind conditions that shifted every 40 seconds. This was the final qualification, the shot that separated genuine operators from very good soldiers. Sarah's fingers twitched. The rifle scope mounting bracket had shifted during the previous shooter's session. Nobody had checked. Nobody had noticed. Vance was about to take a shot with equipment calibrated for failure. And when he missed, they'd blame his skill, not the hardware. It would go in his file. It would matter. Her father had taught her better than that. She moved before thinking it through, dropping from the observation platform with practiced silence. Her sneakers hit packed earth without sound. The range control tower was 40 yards to her left, 3 instructors watching through binoculars. The shooter's position was 20 yards ahead, surrounded by a loose perimeter of support personnel checking wind calls, range conditions, ammunition temperature. Nobody paid attention to the teenager in cargo pants and a faded Marine Corps t-shirt 3 sizes too large. She'd perfected the art of being invisible on military installations. When you grew up on bases, when your last name opened certain doors and closed others, you learned to move through spaces like smoke. Sarah reached the rifle before her brain caught up to her hands. Vance was in position, his eye to the scope, his finger indexed along the receiver. She had maybe 10 seconds before he took his shot. Her hands moved with muscle memory built over years of early morning range sessions, late-night weapons maintenance, countless hours learning from the best long-range shooter the Marine Corps had ever produced. She touched the mounting bracket, felt the infinitesimal play, reached for the torque wrench that should have been in the range kit. Who told you to touch that? The voice hit like a physical force. Commander James Halstead, 6'3" of compressed violence and absolute authority, closed the distance between them in 3 strides. His presence sucked oxygen from the air. Every person on the range froze. Sarah kept her hands on the rifle. The mount's loose. 0.3 degrees clockwise rotation from true. At 2,000 meters, that's. I asked who gave you permission to touch classified equipment. Halstead's voice could strip paint. Step away from that weapon. Right now. The range had gone silent. 20 sets of eyes tracked the confrontation. Sarah could feel their assessment, their assumptions. Teenage girl. Civilian clothes. No authorization badge visible. She'd seen this reaction her entire life, the instantaneous dismissal that came before recognition, before understanding, before anyone bothered to actually look. She met Halstead's eyes. They were the color of winter ocean, completely devoid of warmth. The scope's misaligned. Check it yourself if you don't believe me. But Chief Vance is about to fail this call because nobody verified the equipment after Morrison's session. Morrison shot clean. Halstead's words were precise, clipped. Statement of fact, implicit challenge. Morrison shot 8 inches left at 1,800 meters. You passed him because it was within acceptable parameters. Sarah's voice stayed level. But the deviation indicates mounting bracket failure. Progressive degradation. Vance is shooting 200 meters further with the same equipment. The misalignment will translate to target miss by approximately 6 inches at 2,000 meters given current wind conditions. The silence intensified. Vance had pulled back from the scope, watching the exchange with a carefully neutral expression of someone who'd learned never to take sides during command disputes. The other instructors were converging now, drawn by the confrontation like sharks to blood and water. Halstead's jaw worked. You're telling me how to run my range? You're telling me my equipment is faulty? Do you have any idea? I know exactly where I am. Sarah cut him off, which was either brave or suicidal depending on perspective. I know this is the most advanced sniper training facility in the country. I know your commander James Halstead, SEAL Team 6, 4 deployments, Master Instructor Certification. I know Chief Vance has spent 6 months qualifying for this course, and this is his final attempt before he ages out of the program. She paused. Let that sink in. I also know my father made this exact shot in 2007, Helmand Province, Afghanistan. 3,089 meters. Longest confirmed kill in Marine Corps history until someone beat it 3 years later. He taught me to shoot before I could ride a bike. And he taught me to check my equipment before accusing the shooter of failure. Recognition flickered across Halstead's face. A brief spasm of recalculation. Chen, you're Master Gunnery Sergeant Chen's daughter. Yes, sir. The words came automatic, drilled in by years of military protocol absorbed through proximity. Sarah Chen. And the rifles still misaligned. Halstead stared at her for 5 long seconds. Then he turned to his senior instructor, a weathered chief with the look of someone who'd forgotten what normal life felt like. Patterson, verify the scope mount. Patterson moved with efficient grace, pulling a torque wrench from his kit. The range held its collective breath. Sarah watched him work. So the moment he felt what she'd felt, the microscopic play in the mounting system that wouldn't show up on casual inspection but would absolutely ruin a long-range shot. She's right. Patterson's voice carried across the range. Mounts compromised. 0.28 degrees rotational deviation. Could be stress fracture in the base plate. The wind shifted. Sarah felt it on her skin, the subtle temperature change that meant conditions were evolving. They had maybe 15 minutes before the morning thermals made the shot even harder. Vance needed every advantage he could get. Halstead's attention returned to her like a targeting laser. You can see mounting deviation from 30 feet away. Yes, sir. Parallax error in the scope alignment. The way light was refracting through the objective lens indicated rotational offset. That's impossible. Nobody can see that kind of deviation without equipment. My father could. He taught me. Sarah kept her voice neutral, factual. Emotion was weakness in this environment. He said the best equipment in the world means nothing if you can't read what it's telling you. Halstead's expression shifted into something harder to read. Calculation mixed with challenge mixed with something that might have been grudging interest. Fine. Patterson, swap them out. Vance, stand down while we re-zero. No time. Sarah spoke before thinking it through again. You've got maybe 15 minutes before thermals make this shot near impossible. Vance has been in position, his body temperature's stabilized, his breathing's controlled. You pull him now, you reset his entire physical and mental state. So what do you suggest, Master Gunnery Sergeant's daughter? The title came with edge, with challenge. We let him shoot with compromised equipment. You let me fix it, properly, without removing the rifle from position or disrupting his setup. Sarah's hands were steady. Her voice was steady. Inside, her heart hammered against her ribs like it wanted escape. 2 minutes. If I can't do it in 2 minutes, you pull him and start over. The laugh that erupted from Halstead contained zero humor. You think I'm going to let a 16-year-old civilian touch precision equipment during a qualification shoot? I think you're going to make the smart choice instead of the ego choice. Sarah met his eyes again, held them. I think you're going to recognize that I know what I'm doing, that I've been trained by one of the best long-range shooters in military history, and that Chief Vance deserves equipment that won't sabotage his shot. The wind shifted again. Sarah tracked it automatically, felt the speed change, the direction variance. 12 minutes, maybe less. The morning was burning away. Halstead's silence stretched. Sarah could see him processing, calculating angles she couldn't anticipate. Command decisions involve factors beyond technical accuracy. Politics, liability, protocol, precedent. She'd given him a situation with no clean answer. Chief Vance. Halstead's voice carried command weight. Your call. You trust this kid with your equipment. Vance studied Sarah for a long moment. His face was weathered leather. His eyes the particular shade of tired that came from years of high-stakes operations and impossible expectations. Chen, you said? Master Gunny Chen's daughter. Yes, Chief. Your father saved my life in Helmand. 2008. Counter-sniper operation. He made a shot I still dream about. Vance's expression softened fractionally. If you're half the shooter he was, you're twice as good as most people on this range. Fix my rifle. The permission was implicit challenge. Trust extended like a blade that could cut both ways. Sarah nodded once and moved to the rifle with hands that suddenly felt too visible, too scrutinized. The Barrett M82A1 was 70 pounds of precision engineering, a weapon system capable of reaching out past 2,000 meters and putting rounds through engine blocks. Sarah had been around these rifles since before she could spell their designation. Her father had one at home, legally owned, meticulously maintained. She'd helped him clean it every Sunday morning, learning the mechanical symphony of parts and purposes. She worked without speaking. The mounting bracket required specific torque, specific sequence. She had no equipment, just hands and experience. The bracket had to be loosened carefully, roux-lined by feel, tightened and cross-patterned to prevent stress concentration. Every person on the range watched her work. She could feel their skepticism, their curiosity, their wait for failure. 90 seconds. She stepped back. Verifies 0. Patterson moved in with actual equipment this time, checking her work with professional thoroughness. Sarah watched his expression, saw the moment's surprise registered, then reluctant approval. She's dead on. Perfect alignment. Patterson looked at Halstead. Better than it was when we initially mounted it. Halstead's jaw worked again. Chief Vance, you're clear to shoot when ready. Wind's dying. Take your shot. Vance settled back into position. Sarah started to move away, give him space, but Halstead's hand on her shoulder stopped her. Not rough, but absolutely firm. You stay. You made this your business. Now you watch it through. So Sarah stood 3 feet from the Barrett's muzzle and watched Chief Petty Officer Marcus Vance prepare to take a shot that would define his career trajectory. The range was silent except for wind and the distant thrum of ventilation systems. Vance's breathing slowed, deepened, regulated. His finger moved from index position to trigger. Winds 2.1 meters per second, left to right at target, Sarah said quietly. Temperature rising, air density decreasing. You've got maybe 30 seconds of stable conditions. She didn't know why she said it. Didn't know if it would help or hurt. But her father's voice was in her head, the lessons drilled in over years of range time. Good shooting is team shooting. You give your partner every advantage. Vance didn't acknowledge her words, but his position shifted fractionally. Compensation for wind. His breathing stopped mid-exhale. The Barrett fired. The report was violence condensed into sound, a physical force that punched through air and rattled through bone. Sarah watched through binoculars someone handed her, tracked the vapor trail, the bullet's flight path through air made visible by heat and pressure differential. 2,000 meters. 2 full seconds of flight time. Wind, gravity, air density, temperature gradients, even the Coriolis effect from Earth rotation all worked against the bullet's path. At that distance, perfection was myth. You aimed for excellence and hoped for acceptable. The bullet struck dead center. Perfect hit. The range erupted. Controlled chaos, professionals letting excitement crack through their operational discipline. Vance stood slowly, safetying the weapon, his hands not quite steady. He turned to Sarah. Thank you. Seriously, you saved this shot. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Relief and adrenaline were flooding her system now that the pressure was off. She'd been right. The shot had worked. Vance had qualified. Halstead's hand was still on her shoulder. My office. Right now. The walk to the range control building felt like moving through water. Sarah's legs were shaky, adrenaline crash hitting hard. Halstead stayed silent, his presence looming behind her like weather. Other instructors watched them pass with expressions she couldn't read. The office was military functional. Desk, chairs, walls covered with qualification scores and unit photos. Halstead closed the door and pointed at a chair. Sarah Saturday. You've got about 60 seconds to explain why you're on my range without authorization, how you got past base security, and why I shouldn't call MPs to escort you off this installation. Sarah took a breath. My father's funeral is tomorrow. Marine Corps Honors, Arlington National Cemetery. I'm staying with family friends on base. Colonel Matthews, 3rd Marine Division. He authorized my presence for the week. Halstead's expression flickered. I didn't know Master Gunny-Chen had passed. I'm sorry for your loss. The condolence was rote, automatic, but not entirely insincere. Sarah nodded acknowledgement. Thank you, sir. He taught me everything about long-range shooting. Everything about equipment maintenance, wind reading, ballistic calculation. I grew up on ranges. This world is the only one I know. That doesn't explain why you touch my equipment without authorization. No, sir. That's just me being unable to watch people fail because of equipment problems nobody else noticed. Sarah met his eyes again. My father would have done the same thing. He always said good equipment and good shooting are inseparable. You don't let one compromise the other. Halstead leaned against his desk, arms crossed. Your father was legendary. I knew his reputation, though we never served together. What you did out there, that equipment assessment, that was genuine skill. Not luck. Yes, sir. How old are you again? 16, sir. 17 in 3 months. And you want to be a sniper? It wasn't a question. Sarah answered anyway. I want to be the best long-range shooter in the military. Like my father. Better than my father, if possible. I want to honor what he taught me and prove that his legacy continues. Halstead studied her for a long moment. The military doesn't accept 16-year-olds. You got 2 years before you can even enlist. And women in sniper schools face challenges you can't imagine. I've imagined them my entire life, sir. I've lived on bases, grown up around operators, heard the comments, seen the assumptions. I know what I'm facing. I'm ready for it. Are you? Another non-question. Halstead pushed off the desk, paced to the window overlooking the range. What you did out there was impressive. Legitimately impressive. But one equipment diagnosis doesn't make you a shooter. Doesn't make you qualified for this world. No, sir. What makes me qualified is the 10,000 hours my father spent teaching me. The years of practice, the competition shooting, the ballistic study, the physical conditioning. I can outshoot half the people on this range right now. I know that sounds like ego, but it's just fact. Halstead turned from the window. Prove it. Sarah blinked. Sir, you say you can outshoot my instructors, my operators in training. Prove it. Halstead's expression was pure challenge. Take the same shot Vance just took. Same distance, same conditions. You make that shot, I'll believe you're serious. You miss, you leave my range and don't come back until you're old enough to enlist. The room tilted slightly. Sarah's mouth went dry. You want me to take a 2,000-meter shot? Right now. Conditions are perfect. Equipment's verified. You clearly know the theory. Let's see the execution. This was insane. This was opportunity. This was the exact kind of test her father would have given her. The challenge that separated genuine skill from theoretical knowledge. Sarah's heart rate spiked again, adrenaline flooding back into her system. Yes, sir. I'll take the shot. Halstead's smile contained sharp edges. Outstanding. Let's see what Master Gunny-Chen's daughter can actually do. The walk back to the range felt different this time. Word had spread. More people had gathered. Sarah could feel their attention, their skepticism, their curiosity about the teenage girl who'd called out equipment failure and was now apparently taking the qualification shot herself. Patterson approached as they reached the shooting position. Commander, are you serious? We're letting a civilian kid shoot the Barrett. We're testing a theory, Chief. Set how up? Same parameters as Vance's shot. Fresh target. Sarah's hands were shaking now. She forced them still through sheer will. The Barrett weighted, massive and precisely calibrated. She'd shot rifles before, many times, but never at this distance, never with this pressure, never with dozens of professional operators watching for failure. She settled into position. The rifle's weight was familiar, comfortable. She'd held weapons like this hundreds of times. Muscle memory took over, positioning her body for optimal stability, distributing weight, creating the foundation platform that long-range shooting demanded. Winds shifting, someone called out. 2.4 meters per second, left to right. Temperature up 1 degree. Air density dropping. Sarah processed the information automatically. Her father's voice was in her head again. The rifle is just metal and mathematics. The shot is in your mind. Calculate, breathe, execute. She put her eye to the scope. 2,000 meters compressed into optics, the target visible but small, impossibly distant. The crosshays floated on thermal shimmer and atmospheric distortion. She had to account for bullet drop, wind drift, air density, temperature, even the slight rotation of the Earth during the bullet's 2-second flight. Her breathing slowed. 4 seconds in. 4 seconds out. Regulate heartbeat. Calculate the shot. Wind value times distance divided by bullet velocity equals drift compensation. Gravity drop at 2,000 meters with .308 ammunition traveling at 2,800 feet per second equals 41.6 feet of drop. Adjust for air density. Adjust for temperature. Adjust for the Coriolis effect at this latitude. Her father had made her run these calculations in her head since she was 12 years old. No calculator. No computer. Pure mental mathematics until the numbers became instinct, until she could feel the correction in her bones before her brain finished computing it. The trigger was cold under her finger. Smooth, precise, set at exactly 3.5 pounds of pressure. She moved it back incrementally, feeling for the break point, the exact moment when mechanical tolerance would release the firing pin. "Shooter ready," Patterson called out. Standard range protocol, giving her the official authorization to fire. Sarah's world compressed to the scope picture, the crosshays, the target 2,000 meters downrange. Her breathing stopped mid-exhale. Empty lungs. Still body. The moment between heartbeats when the human machine was most stable. She pressed the trigger. The Barrett's recoil was a controlled explosion, force channeled through the weapon's mechanical systems and into her shoulder. The muzzle brake redirected pressure, but physics couldn't be cheated entirely. 70 pounds of rifle absorbed most of the violence, but enough transferred through to remind her that she was firing one of the most powerful shoulder-mounted weapons in the military inventory. She stayed in the scope, tracking the vapor trail, watching the bullet's path through air made visible. 2 full seconds. An eternity. Every atmospheric variable working to push the round off course. Wind, gravity, air resistance, thermal gradients. The bullet flew true through all of it. Impact. Dead center. Perfect hit. The range went silent for 3 heartbeats. Then erupted. Sarah pulled back from the scope, her hands shaking harder now, adrenaline and relief flooding through her in waves. She'd done it. She'd made the shot. 2,000 meters with perfect accuracy on her first attempt with this weapon system at this distance. Halstead was beside her in 2 strides. His expression was unreadable. Clear the weapon. Make it safe. Sarah's training took over, running through the safety procedures automatically. Magazine out. Chamber check. Lock bolt array. Visual and physical verification of empty chamber. Safety on. She stewed from the position on legs that felt disconnected from her body. That was luck, someone said from the assembled crowd. Beginner's luck. No way she calculated that shot properly. Then let her shoot again, another voice responded. If it's luck, she won't repeat it. Halstead held up one hand, silencing the discussion. His eyes never left Sarah. "Chen, you've shot at distance before. How much?" 1,200 meters maximum, sir. Civilian competition shooting. Different rifle, different conditions. So you just added 800 meters to your personal record and made the shot on your first attempt. "Yes, sir." Sarah's voice was steadier than her hands. "My father walked me through the calculations for shots at this distance. Theoretical practice. He said the mathematics work the same whether you're at 1,000 meters or 3,000. The variables multiply, but the principles are constant." Halstead turned to Patterson. "Your assessment, Chief." Patterson's weathered face showed grudging respect. "That was a legitimate shot, Commander. No wind flukes, no environmental advantages. She calculated and executed at a level I'd expect from operators with years of advanced training. It's not luck. It's genuine skill." "Agreed." Halstead's voice carried across the range. "Which presents me with a significant problem. I've got a 16-year-old civilian who just demonstrated sniper-level proficiency on one of the most difficult shots in our qualification course. A kid who can diagnose equipment failure from across a range and make corrections that my own instructors missed. Master Gunny Chen's daughter is more qualified than half the candidates we run through this program. He paused, and Sarah could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. Command decisions, risk calculations, the kind of thinking that separated good officers from exceptional ones. You can't enlist for 2 years, Halstead continued. But I'm not waiting 2 years to see if you're serious about this. Patterson, get Colonel Braxton on the phone. Tell him I need to discuss an unusual situation regarding advanced sniper training and a potential future candidate. Sarah's heart stopped. Sir, I don't understand. You want to be the best long-range shooter in the military. You want to honor your father's legacy and exceed it? Then you're going to start training properly. Right now. Not when you're 18 and have to start from zero with recruits who've never held a rifle. Halstead's expression was intense, focused. Your father was a legend, Chen. If you've inherited even half his capability, you're too valuable to waste on standard pipeline training. You offering to train me? Personally, I'm offering to make you a project, an experiment. We've never done alien identification development for sniper candidates, never taken someone your age and built them properly from foundation up. But we've also never had someone walk onto my range and demonstrate the kind of raw capability you just showed. Patterson returned from making the call. Colonel Braxton wants to speak with you directly, Commander. He's interested. Halstead took the phone, walking far enough away that Sarah couldn't hear the conversation. She stood on the range with dozens of eyes still tracking her, trying to process what was happening. This morning she'd been a grieving teenager watching training exercises. Now she was apparently being considered for some kind of advanced development program. The grief hit her sideways. Her father would have loved this moment, would have been proud, vindicated, probably insufferably smug about his teaching methods proving out. He'd spent 16 years preparing her for exactly this kind of opportunity, and he'd never get to see the result. Your dad must have been one hell of an instructor, Vance said, approaching from the crowd. That shot was legitimately impressive, kid. I've been shooting for 20 years, and I'm not sure I could have made it on first attempt with an unfamiliar weapon system. He was the best. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. He taught me that shooting is 90% mental preparation and 10% trigger press. Everything is calculation, compensation, understanding the variables. Sounds like Master Gunny Chen. I only worked with him briefly, but his reputation was massive. He saw patterns nobody else noticed, made adjustments that seemed impossible. Vance studied her. You planning to follow his path? Marine Corps. I was. Now I don't know. Whatever Commander Halstead is proposing seems like it might be something different. Halstead doesn't offer opportunities lightly. If he's interested in training you, that's significant. He's one of the best instructors in the special operations community. Guys would kill for the kind of personal attention he's apparently considering giving you. Halstead returned, handing the phone back to Patterson. His expression was carefully neutral. Colonel Braxton wants to meet you. Tomorrow, after your father's funeral. He's the head of Naval Special Warfare Development Group. If anyone can authorize an irregular training program, it's him. Sarah's mind raced. What kind of program are we talking about, sir? Structured training, supervised range access, physical conditioning, academic work in ballistics, meteorology, physics, equipment familiarization, mentorship from active operators. Halstead counted off on his fingers. Basically, we'd be building you into the shooter you want to become, starting now instead of in 2 years. By the time you're eligible to enlist, you'd be years ahead of any standard pipeline candidate. Why would you do this? Why invest resources in someone who can't even serve yet? Halstead's smile was thin. Because your father was a legend, and legends deserve proper succession. Because the military is changing slowly, and opportunities for female snipers are expanding. Because you just demonstrated capability that would be criminal to waste. And because, frankly, I'm curious to see what you could become with proper training. The weight of it settled on Sarah's shoulders. This was the dream, the goal, everything her father had prepared her for. But accepting it meant committing fully, meant structure and discipline and expectations that would define her next 2 years. It meant stepping into her father's legacy with eyes that would always compare her to him. I need to think about it, Sarah said. I need to bury my father tomorrow. I need to process everything that's happened today. Can I give you an answer after I meet with Colonel Braxton? Fair enough. Halstead's expression softened fractionally. You've earned time to consider. But understand, opportunities like this don't come around often. You've got a gift, Chen. The question is whether you're willing to develop it properly. The rest of the day blurred. Sarah returned to Colonel Matthews' guest quarters, her mind spinning through scenarios and implications. She'd come to the range to feel close to her father, to exist in spaces where he'd been respected and understood. Instead, she'd found something she hadn't anticipated, her own path, her own capability, separate from his shadow. That night she dreamed about the shot. 2,000 meters, perfect conditions, the bullet flying true through calculated chaos. In the dream, her father stood beside her, not speaking, just watching with that expression of quiet pride he'd worn during her best performances. When she woke at dawn, her face was wet. Arlington National Cemetery at 1000 hours, full military honors. The ceremony was precise, respectful, exactly what Master Gunnery Sergeant David Chen had earned through 23 years of exemplary service. Sarah stood in dress clothes that felt foreign on her body, accepting condolences from officers and enlisted personnel who'd served with her father, who respected him, who told her stories she'd never heard. Your father once made a shot that saved my entire squad, a colonel told her. Fallujah, 2006. Counter-sniper operation. He was 800 meters away and put a round through a window the size of a dinner plate to take out a shooter who had us pinned. I owe him my life. The stories accumulated. Each one added dimension to the legend, to the man she'd known as father who was also warrior, hero, teacher, brother-in-arms. Sarah listened and absorbed and tried not to cry until the flag was folded and handed to her with words about grateful nation and distinguished service. She held the triangle of fabric and felt the weight of expectations settle even heavier on her shoulders. Colonel Braxton met her at the cemetery reception. He was shorter than she expected, maybe 5'9", with the kind of compact build that suggested endurance rather than power. His eyes were sharp, assessing, the look of someone who made career-defining decisions regularly and lived with the consequences. Miss Chen, I'm sorry for your loss. Your father's reputation preceded him throughout the special operations community. He was genuinely exceptional. Thank you, sir. Sarah's voice was steady now, grief temporarily locked behind military bearing learned through osmosis. Commander Halstead has briefed me on your performance yesterday. Quite impressive, from all accounts. He seems to think you're worth investing significant resources in developing. I'm interested in the opportunity, sir. But I have questions. Braxton's expression showed approval. Good. People without questions concern me. Walk with me. They moved away from the reception, finding relative privacy among the cemetery's organized rows of identical white stones. Braxton walked with hands clasped behind his back, the posture of someone comfortable with authority. The program Commander Halstead is proposing would be unprecedented, Braxton began. We've never done alien identification development for sniper candidates. The liability alone makes it complicated. You're a minor, a civilian, and you'd be working with classified equipment and techniques. So why consider it at all? Because the military is terrible at recognizing exceptional talent early. We wait for people to come through standard pipelines, then spend years undoing bad habits and rebuilding foundations. If we can identify genuine capability before it gets contaminated by inadequate training, we should exploit that advantage. Sarah processed that. So I'd be an experiment, a test case. You'd be the first of hopefully many. If this works, if we can develop you into the operator Halstead thinks you could become, it justifies creating similar programs for other candidates. Early identification, mentorship, structured development before formal military service. They walked in silence for a moment. Sarah's mind worked through implications, risks, opportunities. This was bigger than just her training. This was about changing how the military developed specialized talent. What would be expected of me? She asked. Everything. Total commitment. Physical training 5 days a week. Academic coursework in ballistics, meteorology, physics, mathematics. range time under supervision, equipment maintenance, tactical theory. You'd essentially be living like a candidate in training, except you couldn't officially be one for 2 more years. And when I turn 18, you enlist, go through basic training like everyone else, then immediately transfer to advanced sniper school. But you'd be entering with years of development already complete. You'd be the most prepared candidate in your class by a significant margin. Sarah stopped walking, turning to face Braxton directly. So, I need to understand the real purpose here. Is this actually about developing me, or am I just a political experiment? A test case for some program you want to justify? Braxton's expression showed respect. Both. I won't lie to you, Chen. Yes, you'd be proving a concept. Yes, your success or failure would influence future policy decisions. But that doesn't make the training any less real or the opportunity any less valuable. You'd be getting instruction from some of the best operators in the world. You'd have access to equipment and facilities that most soldiers never see. The political dimension doesn't diminish the practical benefit. What if I fail? What if I'm not as good as yesterday's shot suggests? Then you fail, and we learn from it, and you still got 2 years of exceptional training that would benefit you in whatever military career you pursue afterward. There's no downside for you personally, Chen. Only opportunity. Sarah looked across the cemetery, the endless rows of sacrifice and service. Her father was now part of this, one more stone among thousands, his legacy reduced to dates and rank. She'd spent 16 years preparing for this moment, this choice, this chance to step into the world he'd inhabited and make it her own. I want to do it, she said. I want the training, the development, the opportunity. But I need guarantees. What kind of guarantees? That I'm not just a publicity stunt. That if I demonstrate capability, I'll be allowed to serve in actual operational roles when I'm old enough. Female snipers are still rare, still face discrimination. I won't spend years training just to be stuck in support roles because some commander doesn't believe women belong in combat. Braxton nodded slowly. I can't guarantee you'll never face discrimination. That's reality in any organization. But I can guarantee that if you complete this development program successfully, you'll have documentation of your capability that no one can dismiss. Your record will speak louder than anyone's prejudice. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Sarah appreciated that. When do we start? Tomorrow, 05:30. Commander Holstead will be your primary instructor, with support from other specialists as needed. You'll maintain quarters on base, attend regular training sessions, and be expected to perform at the standard of active operators in development. Braxton extended his hand. Welcome to the most difficult 2 years of your life, Miss Chen. Sarah shook his hand, feeling the firm grip, the unspoken challenge. I'm ready, sir. We'll see. Holstead is a demanding instructor. He doesn't accept excuses or weakness. You'll be pushed harder than you've ever been pushed. Good. That's what my father would have wanted. The training began before dawn, as promised. Sarah reported to the range facility at 05:15, wearing borrowed PT gear and determination. Holstead was waiting with 2 other instructors and a training schedule that looked designed to break someone twice her age. You wanted this, Holstead said without preamble. You're going to get it. No special treatment. No adjustments for age or gender. You perform at standard or you're done. Understood? Yes, sir. Outstanding. 5-mile run. Full pace. Move out. The next 90 days was systematic destruction and reconstruction. Holstead's training program was methodical, comprehensive, and absolutely merciless. Physical conditioning pushed Sarah past limits she didn't know she had. Academic coursework forced her to understand not just how to shoot, but why every variable mattered, how atmospheric conditions affected ballistics, how wind patterns changed with terrain and temperature. Range time was endless. Holstead had her shooting at every distance, every condition, with every weapon system in the sniper inventory. She learned the M110 semi-automatic, the M2010 bolt-action, the Barrett M82 intermaterial rifle. She learned to build firing positions, to read wind indicators, to calculate bullet drop from environmental clues. Again, Holstead would say after she made a shot, same target, different position. You've got 30 seconds to relocate and engage. She learned to shoot from prone, kneeling, sitting, standing, urban positions, vehicle positions. She learned immediate action drills for equipment failure, for target movement, for changing conditions. She learned that perfect shooting was myth, that excellence was about consistency under imperfect circumstances. The academic work was equally demanding. Master Chief Petty Officer Richardson, a meteorologist with 20 years of experience, taught her to read weather patterns, to understand atmospheric stability, to predict wind behavior from cloud formation and temperature gradients. Weather isn't random, Richardson explained during one late-night study session. It follows patterns, rules, physics. Learn to read those patterns and you can predict conditions before they develop. That's the difference between good shooters and exceptional ones. Sarah absorbed it all, driven by equal parts determination and grief. The training was demanding enough that she couldn't think about her father during sessions, but he was there in the quiet moments, in the corrections she made that came from his teaching, in the standard she held herself to because he taught her excellence was the only acceptable outcome. 3 months in, Halstead took her to an advanced range used for real-world scenario training. Urban environment, multiple targets, time pressure, shifting conditions. Mission profile, Halstead briefed. Hostage situation. 4 targets, distances from 400 to 900 meters. Variable wind conditions. You've got limited ammunition and a 5-minute window before enemy reinforcements arrive. This is as close to operational conditions as we can simulate in training. Sarah studied the environment, identifying positions, calculating angles, prioritizing targets. This wasn't just shooting anymore. This was tactical thinking, operational planning, understanding mission requirements beyond just putting rounds on target. She set up in an elevated position with good visibility and began engaging targets. First shot at 400 meters, easiest target. Quick follow-up at 600. Reposition to address wind change. 700-meter target through an urban canyon creating unpredictable air currents. Calculate, compensate, shoot. Final target at 900 meters, moving slowly behind partial concealment. 4 shots. 4 hits. Elapsed time, 3 minutes 40 seconds. Halstead's expression was carefully neutral when she cleared the weapon and stood. Acceptable performance. You missed optimal timing by 20 seconds and your third shot was off-center by 4 inches. Yes, sir. Wind calculation was insufficient for the urban environment. I should have allowed more drift compensation. Correct. But you adapted and completed the mission within acceptable parameters. That's what matters operationally. Halstead paused. You're improving, Chen. Significantly. The raw talent was always there, but you're developing operational thinking now. That's harder to teach than shooting mechanics. It was the closest thing to praise Sarah had heard from him in 3 months. She felt disproportionately proud. The training continued. 6 months in, they added night shooting, thermal optics, ballistic calculation under extreme time pressure. Sarah learned to function on minimal sleep, to maintain focus through exhaustion, to perform when conditions were deliberately stacked against success. Combat doesn't wait for perfect conditions, Halstead reminded her constantly. You shoot when the mission demands it, with whatever equipment you have, in whatever environment exists. Excellence is about performing when everything else is broken. Other operators started paying attention. Sarah became a known quantity on the base, the teenage girl training at operator level, the experiment that was apparently succeeding. Some were supportive. Others were skeptical. Most were curious. Chief Vance checked on her progress regularly. Your father would be proud, he told her during one chance encounter at the base exchange. You're becoming something special, kid. Don't let the pressure break you. The pressure is the point, Sarah replied. If I can't handle it in training, I'll never handle it operationally. 9 months into the program, Colonel Braxton arranged a demonstration. Senior officers from multiple special operations units, invited to observe the unprecedented early development candidate and assess whether the program justified continuation. Sarah knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about proving the concept, justifying the resources, creating precedent for future candidates. She was representing not just herself, but the possibility of changing how the military developed specialized talent. The demonstration was comprehensive. Multiple scenarios, various weapons systems, different conditions. She shot at distance, shot under time pressure, shot from complex urban positions. They tested her academic knowledge with rapid-fire questions about ballistics and meteorology. They evaluated her physical conditioning, her tactical thinking, her ability to function under observation pressure. 7 hours of continuous evaluation. Sarah performed with mechanical precision, pushing exhaustion aside through sheer determination. When it was done, she stood before the assembled officers and waited for judgment. Colonel Braxton spoke first. "Gentlemen, what you've witnessed today is the result of 9 months of intensive development with a candidate who showed exceptional raw capability. Miss Chen is still 6 months away from being eligible to enlist, but she's already performing at a level that exceeds many candidates who complete standard sniper school. The question before us is whether this justifies formalizing alien identification development programs." The discussion that followed was technical, political, pragmatic. Sarah stewed at attention and listened to her capability being analyzed, debated, quantified. It was surreal, being discussed like equipment rather than person, but she understood the necessity. Finally, a 2-star general from Naval Special Warfare Command spoke. "Commander Halstead, your honest assessment. Is this candidate genuinely exceptional, or are we seeing artificial success from excessive resource investment?" Halstead didn't hesitate. "General, I've been training snipers for 15 years. I've put hundreds of candidates through development programs. Miss Chen is in the top 5% of natural capability I've ever encountered. The resource investment is justified because the base talent is genuine. We're not creating capability that doesn't exist. We're developing potential that was already there." The general nodded slowly. "Then I'm prepared to authorize continued development and recommend formalizing this program for future candidates." "Well done, Miss Chen. You've proven a concept today." Relief flooded through Sarah's system. She'd done it, proven herself, validated the program, created opportunity for others. Her father's legacy was secure, and she'd added her own contribution to it. That night, alone in her quarters, Sarah allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she'd accomplished. 9 months of brutal training, constant evaluation, relentless pressure. She'd survived it, exceeded it, proven that age and gender meant nothing compared to capability and determination. She pulled out her phone and opened the photo album. Her father's face looked back at her, weathered and smiling, taken at some range years ago. The caption she'd written after his death read, "I'll make you proud. I promise." She kept that promise, and she had 6 more months to keep getting better. The final 6 months intensified. With the program officially validated, Halstead expanded Sarah's training to include team operations, advanced reconnaissance techniques, counter-sniper tactics. She learned to work with spotters, to integrate with assault teams, to provide overwatch for complex operations. "You're not training to be a lone wolf," Halstead explained. "Snipers are force multipliers within team structures. You need to understand how to support, coordinate, communicate. Individual capability means nothing without team integration." She trained with active SEAL units, providing simulated overwatch during training exercises. The operators treated her with professional respect now, her capability proven through performance rather than assertion. She wasn't one of them yet, but she'd earned their acknowledgement. The day before her 18th birthday, Halstead called her into his office. "Tomorrow you're legally eligible to enlist. You ready?" "Yes, sir. Absolutely. You've exceeded every expectation I had when we started this. You're not just a capable shooter. You're becoming an exceptional one. The kind of operator who changes missions through presence alone." Halstead's expression was serious. "But I need you to understand something before you commit. The novelty factor that protected you during development won't exist in operational units. You'll face skepticism, discrimination, doubt. People will assume your publicity, not capability. You'll have to prove yourself constantly." "I know, sir. I'm ready for it." "I believe you are. But I also want you to know that you've already accomplished something significant. This program exists now because of you. Other candidates will have opportunities because you succeeded. That's legacy, Chen. That's impact beyond just your own career. Sarah felt emotion threatening her composure. Thank you, sir, for believing in me, for pushing me, for making me better than I knew I could be. Thank your father. He built the foundation. I just added structure. Holstead stood, extending his hand. When you complete basic training and transfer to sniper school, I'll be there, and I'll expect you to be the best candidate in your class. I will be, sir. I promise. The next morning, Sarah Chen enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. She raised her right hand and swore to support and defend the Constitution, to bear true faith and allegiance, to obey orders and follow the uniform code of military justice. The words felt like completion, like finally stepping into the identity she'd been building toward her entire life. Basic training was almost anticlimactic after 2 years of training with special operations instructors. The physical demands felt manageable, the academic requirements elementary. Sarah performed with quiet competence, standing out without trying to, earning her drill instructor's attention through capability rather than attitude. 3 months later, she transferred to Scout Sniper Basic Course at Camp Pendleton, the most demanding training pipeline in the Marine Corps, designed to break most candidates and forge the survivors into precision weapons. Sarah walked into the first day of training carrying 2 years of advanced development and her father's legacy on her shoulders. The senior instructor called roll on day 1, reading names and backgrounds. When he reached Sarah's name, he paused. Chen. Any relation to Master Gunnery Sergeant David Chen? Yes, sir. He was my father. The instructor studied her for a long moment. Your father was the best long-range shooter I ever served with. Made shots I still can't explain. You've got a significant legacy to live up to. Yes, sir. I intend to. We'll see. Range is open. Candidates, move out. Sarah moved out with her class, feeling nervous anticipation mixed with absolute certainty. This was where she belonged. This was what her father had prepared her for. This was her chance to prove that Master Gunnery Sergeant Chen's daughter wasn't just living in his shadow. She was casting her own. The shot that defined her reputation came 6 weeks into sniper school. Advanced range exercise, 1,800 meters, extreme wind conditions. Multiple candidates had attempted and failed. The instructors were using it as teaching opportunity, demonstrating how environmental factors could defeat even proper technique. Sarah studied the conditions, calculating variables, reading wind indicators. The shot was possible, but only with perfect compensation and execution. She settled into position, made her calculations, breathed through the sequence. The bullet struck dead center. Perfect hit. The range went silent. Then one of the instructors started laughing, a sound of genuine amazement. She's her father's daughter. No question. That shot was Master Gunny Chen quality. The nickname stuck. For the rest of sniper school, Sarah was Chen's daughter, said with respect, with acknowledgement, with acceptance. She'd earned her place not through publicity or politics or early development programs. She'd earned it through capability demonstrated under pressure, through shots made when others failed, through the same relentless excellence her father had embodied. She graduated top of her class. The Commandant of the Marine Corps attended the ceremony, presenting her graduation certificate personally. Your father would be proud, he said quietly. You've honored his legacy and created your own. The Marine Corps is better for having you. Sarah accepted the words with the composure she'd learned through years of military culture. But inside, she felt the completion of a journey started 16 years earlier, when a legendary sniper decided to teach his daughter everything he knew about precision shooting and excellence. 6 months later, Sarah deployed to Afghanistan with a scout sniper platoon. Her first operational assignment, the culmination of years of preparation. She was 20 years old, carrying the most advanced sniper rifle the Marine Corps owned, responsible for providing precision fire support for infantry operations in hostile territory. The first time she made an operational shot, 700 meters, hostile combatant threatening a patrol, she felt her father's presence so strongly it was almost physical. The shot was clean, the threat eliminated, the patrol safe. She'd done exactly what she'd been trained to do, what he'd prepared her to do. That night, writing in her journal by red light in a forward operating base, Sarah recorded the day's events with clinical precision. Then, at the bottom of the page, she added a personal note. Dad, I made the shot. I did what you taught me. I'm living the legacy you created, and I'm making it my own. Thank you for everything. I miss you every day, but I know you'd be proud of who I've become. I'm a Marine Corps sniper now, just like you. Maybe, someday, as good as you. I'll keep working toward that. I promise. She closed the journal and secured it in her gear. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself. The journey wasn't finished. It was just beginning. But for tonight, in a small base in Afghanistan, Sarah Chen allowed herself to feel satisfied. She'd honored her father's memory. She'd exceeded expectations. She'd proven that capability and determination could overcome any obstacle. She was Master Gunnery Sergeant Chen's daughter, and she was becoming something more, her own kind of legendary. The wind picked up outside, howling through Afghan mountains like it had for centuries. Sarah checked her rifle one more time before sleep, muscle memory and discipline overriding exhaustion. The weapon was clean, maintained, ready for whatever tomorrow brought. Just like her father had taught her, just like she'd teach others someday. The legacy continued. The standard held. The impossible shots kept getting made. And somewhere, maybe, Master Gunny Chen was smiling. 3 years into her operational career, Staff Sergeant Sarah Chen had become something the Marine Corps hadn't quite anticipated. A female sniper with confirmed kills that rivaled veteran operators twice her age. She'd deployed 4 times, worked with special operations units from 3 different countries, and made shots that were quietly discussed in briefing rooms across the special operations community. The reputation was both asset and burden. Chen, you've got tasking. Master Sergeant Rodriguez found her in the equipment maintenance area of Camp Leatherneck, where she was performing the meticulous cleaning ritual that had become meditation. Colonel wants to see you. 15 minutes. Sarah nodded, finishing the bolt carrier group inspection before reassembling her rifle. Whatever the tasking was, it would wait for proper equipment maintenance. Her father's voice was still in her head after all these years. Take care of your weapon and it takes care of you. The colonel's office was Spartan functional, maps covering walls, secure communications equipment humming in the corner. Colonel Marcus Webb was a career infantry officer who'd learned to respect snipers through years of watching them save lives in impossible situations. Staff Sergeant Chen, reporting as ordered, sir. Webb looked up from a classified document, his expression unreadable. At ease, Chen. Close the door and have a seat. This conversation is sensitive. Sarah complied, her mind running through possibilities. Sensitive tasking usually meant high-value targets, complex operations, political complications. She'd handled all 3 before, but the colonel's tone suggested something different. I'm going to be direct, Webb began. MARSOC has requested you specifically for an advisory role. They are standing up a new long-range precision engagement training program, and they want someone with your operational experience and instructional capability to help develop curriculum. Sarah processed that. Marine Special Operations Command requesting her personally was significant, but advisory role meant stepping away from operational deployments, from the field work she'd spent years preparing for. With respect, so, I'm a shooter, not an instructor. There are operators with more experience who'd be better suited. They don't want more experience. They want your specific skill set. Webb pulled out another document, this one marked with security classifications that made Sarah's eyebrows rise. You're aware of the evolving long-range engagement requirements. Threats operating at distances beyond standard training parameters. Yes, sir. NEP adversaries developing counter-sniper capabilities that require extended range responses. Exactly. MARSOC is developing doctrine for engagements beyond 2,000 meters. Extreme long-range shooting. The kind of work your father pioneered and you've apparently inherited the capability for. Webb's expression was serious. They need someone who can shoot at those distances and teach others to do the same. Your name came up in every discussion. Sarah felt the familiar weight of her father's legacy pressing down again. 20 years after his record shot, the military was finally catching up to what he demonstrated was possible, and they wanted his daughter to lead the effort. What's the timeline? So, 2-year assignment. Quantico, working with MARSOC instructors to develop training protocols, equipment specifications, selection criteria. You'd be building the program from foundation up. Webb leaned forward. Chen, I know you prefer operational work, but this assignment has strategic impact. You'd be shaping how the Marine Corps approaches long-range precision engagement for the next generation. That's legacy-level contribution. The word legacy hit harder than Webb probably intended. Sarah had spent years trying to honor her father's memory while establishing her own identity. This assignment would tie her irrevocably to his pioneering work, would make her the direct continuation of his legacy rather than parallel to it. But it would also mean taking what he'd started and systematizing it, making it accessible to others, ensuring that extreme long-range shooting wasn't just individual capability but organizational competency. I'll do it, sir. When do I need to report? 60 days. Finish this deployment rotation. Take leave, then report to Quantico. Webb's expression softened fractionally. For what it's worth, Chen, this is the right assignment for you. Your father would be proud. Sarah stood, saluting. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Walking back to her quarters, Sarah pulled out her phone and opened the photo album she'd maintained since her father's death. 7 years of images now, training progression, deployment photos, mission success documentation. Visual record of becoming the operator she'd promised to be. She added a voice memo to the album. Dad, they want me to teach what you taught me. Build programs around the techniques you pioneered. I'm scared I won't do it justice, that I'll fail to capture what made you exceptional. But I'm going to try. Because this is how legacy really works, isn't it? Not just being good yourself, but making others better. Making the capabilities sustainable beyond individual talent. The next 60 days passed in operational rhythm. Sarah ran missions, provided overwatch, made shots that kept Marines alive. Each engagement was clinical, professional, the result of years of training and natural capability merged into consistent excellence. But her mind was already working through instructional frameworks, training progressions, ways to communicate skills that felt instinctive to her. Teaching was different than doing. She'd need to break down processes she executed automatically, articulate decisions made in fractions of seconds, systematize approaches that felt more like intuition than technique. Commander Halstead called 2 weeks before her deployment ended. Heard about your new assignment. MARSOC made a smart choice. Thank you, sir. I'm nervous about the transition from operational to instructional work. Don't be. You've been teaching since you were 16, demonstrating capability that forced everyone around you to recalibrate their understanding of possible. That's instruction through example, which is often more effective than formal teaching. Halstead paused. Your father was the same way. He made people better just by showing them what excellence looked like. I'm not my father, sir. No, you're not. You're Sarah Chen, one of the best long-range shooters currently operating, with demonstrated capability under conditions most people can't imagine. You've earned this assignment through performance, not legacy. Remember that when imposter syndrome hits. The conversation steadied her. Halstead had a gift for cutting through self-doubt with direct assessment. He'd been doing it since her first day of training 7 years ago. Quantico in autumn was different than forward operating bases in Afghanistan. Clean buildings, structured schedules, the order precision of military installations in peacetime. Sarah reported to the MARSOC training division and met the team she'd be working with. Experienced operators, training specialists, equipment experts, all focused on developing extreme long-range shooting capability. Major Sarah Vance, daughter of Chief Petty Officer Marcus Vance, who Sarah had helped qualify years ago, was the project lead. Staff Sergeant Chen, welcome aboard. My father still talks about the day you diagnosed his rifle malfunction and then made the 2,000-meter shot. Said it was one of the most impressive demonstrations of natural capability he'd ever witnessed. Your father earned that qualification. I just help with equipment. Humble and competent, Good combination. Vance pulled up digital displays showing program objectives. Here's what we're building. Training pipeline for extreme long-range precision engagement. 3,000-meter capability as standard, 4,000-meter as stretch goal. We need doctrine, equipment specifications, selection criteria, training progressions, and assessment protocols. You are a subject matter expert on what's actually possible at those distances. Sarah studied the displays, her mind automatically calculating challenges. Extreme long-range shooting isn't just scaling up from standard distances. The variables compound exponentially. Wind, air density, temperature, even Earth's rotation become major factors. We'll need candidates with exceptional mathematical capability and intuitive environmental reading. Agreed? That's why we want you designing the selection process. What identifies someone with your capability before they've had opportunity to develop it? The question was more complex than it appeared. Sarah's capability came from genetic predisposition, intensive early training, and years of her father's focused instruction. Replicating that pipeline for candidates without those advantages would require different approaches. We need to test for pattern recognition, spatial reasoning, environmental sensitivity, and mathematical intuition, Sarah said, thinking through the problem. Traditional marksmanship assessment won't identify extreme long-range capability. We need different evaluation frameworks. Over the following months, Sarah worked with psychologists, training specialists, and equipment designers to build comprehensive program architecture. They developed cognitive assessments that tested spatial reasoning under time pressure, created environmental sensitivity evaluations that measured candidates' ability to read atmospheric conditions, designed mathematical challenges that revealed intuitive calculation capability. The equipment specifications were equally complex. Standard sniper rifles weren't designed for 4,000-meter engagements. Sarah worked with manufacturers to develop weapon systems with enhanced ballistic coefficients, improved barrel harmonics, advanced recoil management. She test-fired dozens of prototype configurations, providing feedback that drove iterative design improvements. "You're essentially designing the sniper rifle of the future," one engineer told her after a particularly productive testing session. These specifications will influence military procurement for the next decade. 6 months into the assignment, they ran the first pilot selection course. 40 candidates, drawn from Scout Sniper qualified Marines with exemplary records. Sarah had designed a 4-day assessment that would identify the 5 candidates with genuine extreme long-range potential. Day 1 was cognitive evaluation. Pattern recognition tests, spatial reasoning challenges, mathematical problem-solving under time pressure. Sarah watched candidates work through assessments she designed, looking for the same intuitive capability she possessed. Most were competent. A few showed exceptional promise. Day 2 was environmental sensitivity. Candidates spent hours on observation ranges, identifying wind patterns, predicting atmospheric changes, reading terrain effects on ballistic trajectories. Sarah walked among them, asking questions, probing their reasoning, assessing not just what they observed but how they processed environmental data. One candidate, Sergeant James Morrison, demonstrated capability that made Sarah pause. His wind calls were consistently accurate. His atmospheric predictions proved correct. His terrain analysis showed sophisticated understanding of how physical geography affected bullet flight. "Morrison," she said during a break, "you've got background in meteorology." "No, Staff Sergeant. I grew up in Wyoming, hunting in mountain conditions. Learned to read weather because it determined whether you ate that winter." He paused. "My grandfather was a shooter. Not military, but he understood long-range work. Taught me to respect environmental variables." Sarah nodded, seeing echoes of her own development. Not everyone learned from legendary military snipers, but genuine teaching took many forms. Morrison had foundation capability that could be developed. Day 3 was long-range shooting assessment. Not standard distances, but progressively extending ranges designed to reveal limitation points. Candidates started at 1,200 meters and worked outward in 200-meter increments. Most struggled beyond 1,800. A few reached 2,000. Morrison made consistent hits at 2,200 meters using equipment he'd never trained with before. You've shot at these distances before, Sarah observed. No, Staff Sergeant. Longest shot I've made operationally is 1,400 meters. But the mathematics work the same regardless of distance. Variables compound, but principles are constant. Morrison's expression showed focus, not stress. My limitation right now is equipment familiarity. Give me a week with this rifle system, and I could push further. Sarah made notes. Morrison was demonstrating exactly the capability profile they were looking for. Strong foundation skills, intuitive environmental reading, mathematical confidence, and self-awareness about current limitations versus potential capability. Day 4 was the final evaluation. 2,400-meter shot, challenging wind conditions, time pressure. Only candidates who'd excelled through previous assessments were invited to attempt it. Sarah watched 5 candidates try and fail before Morrison stepped to the firing line. He took longer than the others, spending 3 minutes just observing conditions, reading wind indicators at multiple distances, calculating the complex ballistic trajectory. When he finally settled into shooting position, his movements were precise, economical, the efficiency of someone who understood that excess motion introduced variables. The shot broke clean. Sarah tracked the bullet through optics, watching vapor trail, observing wind drift correction, seeing Morrison's calculations play out in physical reality. The round struck 4 inches right of center. Not perfect, but at 2,400 meters with unfamiliar equipment, it was exceptional. Congratulations, Sergeant Morrison. You won the program. The 5 selected candidates began intensive training 2 weeks later. Sarah worked with them daily, sharing techniques her father had taught her, demonstrating skills she'd developed through years of operational shooting, building the foundation for extreme long-range capability. Teaching forced her to articulate processes she'd always executed intuitively, breaking down wind reading into systematic observation protocols, explaining ballistic calculation methods that worked under time pressure, demonstrating equipment maintenance standards that ensured reliability at extreme distances. Morrison absorbed instruction like he'd been waiting his entire life for it. The others were competent, dedicated, improving steadily. But Morrison showed the same natural affinity Sarah recognized from her own development. He wasn't just learning techniques. He was understanding principles, seeing patterns, developing intuitive capability that transcended mechanical skill. You remind me of someone, Sarah told him after a particularly impressive training session. The way you approach shooting, the questions you ask, the connections you make. It's how I learned from my father. Morrison looked uncomfortable with the comparison. Staff Sergeant, you're legendary in the sniper community. I'm just a kid from Wyoming who got lucky with natural capability. Natural capability isn't luck. It's gift and responsibility combined. What matters is what you do with it. Sarah's tone was serious. My father taught me that excellence isn't about being better than others. It's about being better than you were yesterday, consistently, until impossible becomes routine. That's what I see in you. The training intensified over months. They pushed distances further, added environmental complications, introduced equipment challenges. Sarah designed scenarios that replicated worst-case operational conditions, degraded equipment, extreme weather, time pressure, multiple target engagements. The candidates struggled, failed, adapted, improved. 12 months into the program, Major Vance arranged a demonstration for senior leadership. Proof of concept, validation of resource investment, justification for formal program establishment. The candidates would shoot at distances between 2,500 and 3,500 meters, demonstrating capability that would have seemed impossible 5 years earlier. Sarah felt familiar anxiety. This was her pilot selection course moment again, except now she was responsible for others' performance, not just her own. The candidate's success or failure would reflect on her instruction, her program design, her ability to communicate skills she'd spent years developing. They are ready, Morrison said quietly, standing beside her as they waited for the demonstration to begin. You've given us everything we need. Now we just have to execute. The demonstration was flawless. All 5 candidates made hits beyond 2,500 meters. 3 reached 3,000. Morrison made a shot at 3,400 meters that left the assembled officers silent with amazement. A three-star general approached Sarah afterward. Staff Sergeant Chen, what you've built here is remarkable. You've taken capability that existed in maybe 5 people worldwide and created a training pipeline that can produce it systematically. This changes strategic planning for long-range precision operations. Sarah stood at attention, accepting the praise while internally deflecting it. She hadn't created anything new. She'd simply systematized what her father had pioneered, made it teachable, proven that excellence could be developed rather than just discovered. But maybe that was legacy. Maybe honoring what came before meant making it accessible to what came next. Her father had been exceptional. She was making exceptional sustainable. That night, she updated a journal for the first time in months. Dad, I taught 5 Marines to shoot at distances you pioneered. They're not as good as you were. Not yet. But they are better than they were a year ago, and they're going to keep improving. I think that's what you would have wanted. Not just me carrying forward your capability, but building systems that make others capable too. Legacy isn't about individual achievement. It's about multiplication, making one generation's exceptional into the next generation's standard. She paused, then added a final line. I miss you every day, but I'm doing okay. I think I'm doing what you prepared me for. Thank you for everything. I'll keep making you proud. Sarah closed the journal and looked out the window at Quantico's dark training ranges. Somewhere out there, 5 Marines were becoming exceptional long-range shooters. In a year, there would be 20 more, then 100. Eventually, extreme long-range precision engagement would be standard special operations capability rather than rare individual skill. That was legacy. That was how excellence persisted beyond individual lives. That was how Master Gunnery Sergeant David Chen's pioneering work became doctrine, became training, became the foundation for capabilities he'd only imagined. And his daughter was making it happen, not just honoring his memory, but building on it, extending it, ensuring it mattered beyond just history. The impossible shots kept getting made. And now, finally, they were teaching others to make them too. 2 weeks after the successful demonstration, Sarah received an encrypted message that changed everything. The subject line read, Operation Sandstone, your presence required. The classification level made her pulse quicken. This wasn't training. This was operational. The briefing room was crowded with senior operators from multiple special operations units. Sarah recognized faces from her deployments, legendary shooters whose reputations preceded them. At the head of the room stood Colonel Braxton, now a brigadier general, the same officer who'd authorized her early development program 9 years ago. Staff Sergeant Chen, welcome. Please have a seat. Braxton's tone was grave. What I'm about to brief is classified at the highest levels. You've been read into this operation because we have a situation that requires your specific capability. The display behind him showed satellite imagery of a compound in hostile territory. High-value target, international terrorist, responsible for attacks that killed hundreds of civilians including 43 Americans. Has been hiding in this location for 6 months, surrounded by security that makes conventional assault operations too risky. Sarah studied the imagery, her mind automatically calculating angles, distances, complications. The compound was in mountainous terrain, isolated, defensible. Standard approaches would be detected long before operators could reach effective engagement range. The only viable option is extreme long-range precision engagement. Braxton's eyes locked on Sarah. 3,800 meters from the nearest concealed position with line of sight to the target's location. In terrain with unpredictable wind patterns and elevation changes that affect ballistic trajectories in ways we're still modeling. The room was silent. 3,800 meters. Sarah had never shot operationally beyond 2,700. The demonstration shot Morrison made was impressive, but it was still training, still controlled conditions. This was different. This was a shot that would either eliminate a terrorist responsible for mass casualties or reveal the limitations of extreme long-range doctrine. Why me? Sarah asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Because you're the best we have at these distances. Because you designed the training that proved this is possible. Because your father made the longest confirmed kill in Marine Corps history, and you've inherited his capability. Braxton leaned forward. And because this mission has one shot. Literally. We get one opportunity before the target relocates. We need absolute confidence in the shooter. Sarah felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. This was beyond training, beyond demonstrations, beyond proving concepts. This was operational reality at the extreme edge of human capability. A shot her father would have been asked to make. A shot she'd spent her entire life preparing for without knowing it. I'll need 7 to 2 hours for reconnaissance, environmental study, and equipment preparation, she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. I'll need a spotter who understands extreme long-range calculations. And I'll need Morrison. Braxton raised an eyebrow. Morrison from your training program is barely qualified at these distances. He's the best environmental reader I've trained. At 3,800 meters, reading wind patterns is more important than shooting mechanics. I trust his capability. Sarah's tone left no room for argument. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Approved. You have 7 to 2 hours. Mission execution is scheduled for 0530, 4 days from now. Braxton's expression was serious. Chen, your father's record shot was 3,089 meters. You're about to attempt something 700 meters beyond that. This will either validate everything we've built or prove we've pushed beyond realistic capability. Sarah stood, saluting. We'll make the shot, sir. I promise. Walking out of the briefing room, she felt Morrison fall into step beside her. He'd been in the back of the room, watching, understanding what was being asked. 3,800 meters, he said quietly. That's beyond anything we've trained for. Yes, but the mathematics work the same. Variables compound, but principles are constant. Sarah repeated his word from months ago back to him. We have 4 days to prepare for the most important shot either of us will ever make. Let's get to work. They spent 7 to 2 hours in intensive preparation, studying satellite imagery, modeling wind patterns, calculating ballistic trajectories with every variable they could anticipate. Sarah test-fired the rifle system dozens of times, familiarizing herself with its specific characteristics, learning its mechanical personality. Morrison ran environmental simulations, building predictive models for atmospheric conditions at the target location. The night before mission execution, Sarah sat alone in her quarters and pulled out her father's dog tags. She'd carried them through every deployment, every training evolution, every moment of doubt. The metal was worn smooth from years of handling, but the stamped letters were still readable. Chen, David. USMC. Dad. Tomorrow I'm attempting a shot that's further than yours. Further than anyone's made operationally. I'm scared I'll fail, that I'll prove the limitations rather than the possibilities. But I'm going to try. Because you taught me that impossible is just a calculation nobody's made yet. Because you showed me that excellence is about attempting what others think can't be done. She closed her fist around the dog tags. I love you. I miss you. And tomorrow, I'm making the shot. For you. For everyone who believed in me. For everyone who needs this mission to succeed. Sarah Chen closed her eyes and visualized the shot one more time. 3,800 meters through mountain wind and morning thermals. The bullet flight time would be nearly 5 seconds. 5 seconds of physics, mathematics, and environmental forces all conspiring against success. But she'd spent her entire life preparing for this moment. Her father's legacy, Holstead's training, years of operational experience, Morrison's environmental reading capability. It was all converging into one shot that would define everything. Tomorrow, at 0530, she would find out if impossible was just another distance waiting to be crossed. The rifle was ready. She was ready. The calculation was complete. Now came the execution.